Good morning, it is 6:45. Welcome back to Great Day for this Tuesday, second day of September, as we welcome to the desk our friend who visits us every week at this time. Yes, indeed, it is time for Ron the Car Guy, ladies and gentlemen, and time to learn something about your car that you may not have known.
Ooh, let's do it.
All right.
We're going to talk about fluids today, and we're probably all aware that you should check the different fluid levels and stuff in your vehicle.
No question about it, yeah.
And it's implied that it's typically done when you get your oil changed or get your car serviced and stuff. But one of the things I want to talk a little bit about are fluids that it's maybe normal for them to be low and you have to add some, and then fluids that you should never have to add any to.
And if you are adding, then there could be a problem.
There could be a big problem or something that's going to cost you a lot of money down the road. And engine oil is the first one that comes to mind. We're all taught to check your oil, and some of us do, some of us don't. But it's actually okay if you have to occasionally put some engine oil in your engine. Now, what is
occasionally? Because you're a mechanic, and that's the same phrase my dad uses. I mean, occasionally, well, it's not uncommon. That's another one. It's not uncommon.
Well, the first thing to keep in mind is if it's not in there, where did it go? Right. And if it's leaking externally, then you should probably have it checked out if you're seeing it on the ground. But keep in mind, I mean, if you're having to put a quart of oil in a car, because sometimes people will come in and they'll say, I'm having to add a lot of oil to my car, and I see some spots on the ground. Well, I mean, a quart of oil is going to leave. I mean, take a quart of any fluid and pour it on the ground. It's going to leave a large spot. Yeah. And so don't make the mistake that you have a few spots and you think that's where the oil's going, and maybe it's burning the oil instead. I mean, fixing those small leaks isn't going to fix a major consumption issue. But back to your question, Lou, how much is occasionally? Most auto manufacturers have deemed that if you have to add a quart of oil about every 12 to 1,500 miles, it would be considered normal.
Wow. Really? That often?
That often.
I didn't realize that.
Now, with that said, I can't remember when last I owned a vehicle that I had to add oil to.
We've all owned one.
Well,
at one time or another.
Usually when we're younger.
Or when you're selling your car,
smoke,
it burns a little oil.
You brought up a great point there, Jason. Remember back when engines were worn and they actually burned oil, you had the blue smoke?
Yeah.
You don't have blue smoke anymore.
Oh, really?
Because the catalytic converters, the component that's in charge of cleaning up the exhaust, cleans that blue smoke up.
Oh, well, that's good.
So it's easier to sell that car that burns oil now because you can't see it. But anyway, again, if it's let go a long time and you're having to put oil in, it will plug up emissions parts, those catalytic converters and stuff like that. So, if you're putting a quart of oil in every 1,500 miles or so, I mean, personally, I think that's a little excessive, but manufacturers have deemed that that's, could be somewhat normal, but you'd probably want to get it checked out. If you've seen it on the ground, then do get it checked out.
Yeah, that's a telltale sign.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of cars nowadays have computers, and a lot of times my car will tell me it's like your oil's starting to get low, things like that. Do we rely on those computers, or do you still say, hey, it's best to check every once in a while?
I would still check it every once in a while. I mean, you've got two things it looks at. Some cars it looks at the level, which would be an indication that it's low. Other vehicles it looks at the pressure. You can be a couple quarts low on oil and starving some things in the engine, and you still have good pressure, so the computer's not going to tell you. So there's a reason there's still a dipstick in that engine, and it's to check the oil level. So you should check it every once in a while.
Okay.
The other thing I want to talk about was brake fluid. And with brake fluid, maybe one time during the life of your brake pads, you might have to add some brake fluid. And that is because as the brake components wear, it takes more fluid to make up for the distance that they have to move. So it might become low. You might have to top it off one time. But anything more than that, there's a problem. If you're adding brake fluid to your car, you've got to go get it checked out, because that becomes a safety issue. I mean, that's what runs the brakes is the liquid fluid in there. It's a hydraulic system. It's a sealed system. It doesn't burn it like an engine, so you should really never have to put brake fluid in a vehicle.
Okay, what about flushing the brake fluid out of your system? And because they know brake fluid, for those people that don't know, absorbs moisture.
Oh. Exactly. It's like a sponge.
It's like a sponge.
It's hydroscopic. That's a technical term. but it does absorb moisture. And on today's vehicles, it's easier because there's meters and there's strips and stuff you can use to test the brake fluid. But brake fluid should be flushed out. As a rule of thumb, if you don't have a way of testing it, you should do it every 2 years.
Oh, okay.
And that's an excellent point, Lou, because it used to be. I remember when I was in high school, all that you cared was if there was brake fluid in the car. You didn't care the condition. But on today's vehicles with the anti-lock brakes, they've got modulators and components that cost thousands of dollars, and they got small passages and they're subject to corrosion and stuff. So they want to get that moisture out of there that brake fluid is actually absorbing. And so yeah, it should be flushed. Most places can test it. It's just a dip strip you put in. But I was
going to say, is that when they show you the dots of the different colored liquids?
I like that sometimes when I see places do that, Jackie, because you can't always tell by the color of the fluid. I mean, yeah, it's discolored, but I've seen brake fluid that looked to be in pretty good condition, and it was just riddled with moisture. I mean, you tested it, and actually they don't test for moisture. They're testing for dissolved copper. There's a lot of copper components inside the brake system, and as the fluid deteriorates or gets a lot of moisture, and it'll corrode it and it'll start dissolving that copper. So
that's what they're finding.
Yeah, the test
fluid,
strips.
okay.
Yeah, so the damage is already happening when the test strip says, "Hey, change this brake fluid."
Okay. What about something that over the weekend a guy named Clinton Boyer found out that his transmission went out on him and possibly could have cost him a chance of racing in the chase? What about transmission fluid?
Transmission fluid, you should never have to add transmission fluid.
Ever?
Ever.
Really?
If it's not in the transmission, it went somewhere. You need to figure out where it went, or you'll be a Clint Boyer.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It's non-consumable. It's a sealed system. If it's not on the inside, it went somewhere on the outside, and you need to figure out where it is.
Yeah, and if you don't have enough fluid, it's going to break.
Oh yeah. It'll
break.
overheat. Stuff won't get lubricated, and you won't be in the chase. That's that simple. Coolant and antifreeze is another good one. Just like the transmission, coolant or your antifreeze in your radiator, that's supposed to be a sealed system. You should never have to add to that. Now, every convenience store has gallons of that product lined up because your temperatures run a little bit high, so you go out and you put some coolant in. But again, if it's not on the inside, if it's not in the system, it went somewhere. And if you're not seeing it leak on the ground, then you need to be even more concerned, because that means it's leaking inside the engine.
Into the engine.
Exactly. It could be leaking into the cylinders. It could be leaking into the oil, which would be almost instant damage to your engine. But you shouldn't have to add antifreeze. And if you're having to add antifreeze to your vehicle, then you need to have someone do a pressure test and figure out where it's going.
Okay.
And a little unknown fact, why does the cooling system run under pressure? They've got the cap on there. When it gets warm, everything gets under pressure.
Well, I know. We'll let them answer.
Lou knows. Jackie probably doesn't know.
I have to know.
Yeah, you have to know.
I have to know.
I imagine because it heats up and expands.
When they put it under pressure, it raises the boiling point.
Oh, okay.
So most vehicles, the coolant is under 14 or 15 pounds of pressure. It raises the boiling point another 45 to 50 degrees.
Because?
Oh boy.
Oh, here we go.
PV equals nRT. Pressure times volume equals a constant times another constant in temperature. So if you raise the pressure, you raise the boiling point too. You have to keep both sides of the equation.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Dr.
Absolutely.
Science.
That is awesome.
One final
Thank you
moment
very
you touch on quickly would happen to do with power steering.
Power steering, again, that's like your transmission. It's a sealed system. If it's not on the inside, then it's got to be somewhere on the outside, and you need to fix that, or it's a safety issue. You're going to lose your steering.
Believe it or not, when that one leaks, it a lot of times smokes.
The power steering fluid?
Yeah.
Because it's leaking on the exhaust?
And it also screams at you, too.
Exactly. It'll damage the pump and stuff.
You see someone yelling at you and be like, your car is
that one's
smoking.
going away, though,
That's
because a lot of today's cars are going to
Not that I
electric
know.
power steering. They're doing that to free up space underneath the hood and improve gas mileage. You're not using your engine to create the power steering. You're using electricity.
All right, so if you need your fluids checked, where can they have their fluids checked?
They can come to westsideautopros.com, click on the locations tab, and you can find us.
Perfect. Good
Awesome.
job, man. Learned a lot
Thanks,
of
Ron.
things today,
Yeah, I
man.
did too.
Thank you.
Your Captain Knowledge this morning. Wonderful.
Well, I love how Jason threw the science in there, too.
Because he's Dr. Science. We'll be right back.
That's all I remember.
We're watching Great Day live on KCWI.